Zanzo, Fire for Hire, action, romance, comedy, drama. No?
Jam on toast!
Ohio guys, welcome to the Jam. Cameron S, and today the toast is to Rorouni Kenshin. So here's another new thing spinning up. I've been talking to Neil Ritchie. We've started up a new thing, apparently, called We Are Anime Club. I can tell you that it's not easy to get one of these things started, so maybe we're looking at a few humps along the way, but I think it's going to run every 2 weeks or so. So the short sell on this one is that Kenshin, formerly known as Batosai the Manslayer, is kind of hung up his sword and has become a wanderer who has vowed not to kill ever again. So he wields a reverse blade sword and goes around and uses it to protect the innocents. In the Meiji era, where swords have been outlawed for normal citizens. My love for this one's got to be the weapons and the natural fighting, none of the chi spell nonsense, but I think it's very interesting to look at the reverse blade sword as like its own technique, because you do need to make different things happen than a normal Japanese style sword. And of course the Sanbakuto, that thing's amazing. I love that big load sword that Zanzo has. My hate for this one is very similar to my dislikes for Superman in general. Kenshin's just kind of overpowered in a lot of sense. Thus, the appeal of the show is that he's this legendary swordsman. But the fact that he doesn't do anything, or that he tries to cripple at best a lot of the time, ends up being kind of a downer for the action scenes. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we do get a lot of Kenshin versus Batosai inner conflict, and that's probably what the show really is him fighting with his desire not to kill anymore versus the practicality of it. When you sell me on a swordsman show, I kind of want sword fighting. Kind of the opposite problem I have with Samurai Champloo. The MVP for this series is, of course, Kenshin. He holds up the whole thing, blah, 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 blah. But the whole thing's just kind of boring to me, so I honestly blame him for that. Personally, my favorite character is Zanzo. I think he's much more interesting. I think he's dealing with adversity through the show, and he's typically fighting people who are better than he is with all he's got. Unlike Kenshin, who is fighting people who are as good as he is or worse most of the time, and just doing everything he can not to kill them. Aesthetics. This isn't even as pretty as I remember it being. I don't know why. I don't really like the aesthetic look to it. The style of the anime is, or it feels older, and there's nothing wrong with that per se. But if I redone this, I would like to dig up the people who did Slayers. Make it look more like that. Though those guys are probably dead. With that complaint out of the way, it's super iconic. The scar shape, especially for Kenshin, they do a really good job of representing each person as themselves, and typically they wear pretty much the same clothes all the time, which is gross, but probably what happened then, even if they just got naked for a day and washed them once a week. But for those who do change clothes, they do it really well, and they manage to make them look pretty much the same. The little anime emotes are not overwhelming in this, which is good too, because a lot of times that turns people away. They are kind of shocking when you do notice them, but a lot of times you're just like, whatever, it's not someone turning into a cat, I'm good. Aesthetics gets a 7. Character development. This entire show is character development. Kenshin is not the same character from episode to episode. That's like the one serialized storyline is Kenshin and how he's developed and how he's dealing with no longer being Batosai. And he just kind of drags everyone else along because Yayako grows a little bit and then pretty much stops. Zanzo kind of turns a leaf. Basically, he just stops fighting for money. Miskaru's basically the same person. And a lot of these other peripheral characters are just, here I am, I'm a tool for plot development. Which again, they're 20-minute episodes, so their plot development usage is limited. But while it's a narrow focus on character development, it is pretty tall. You do get a lot of it for the few characters that you're developing. Character development gets a 95. Storyline. I almost want to say there wasn't a story here, but I know there was. It couldn't get into it, and I didn't care enough about who it was, because Batosai the Manslayer doesn't mean anything other than he killed a lot of people once. So maybe he was a bad guy. So that doesn't really get me on board with the character on either side, because either I was supposed to get into him being a bad guy, or I'm supposed to get into him being such a powerful good guy. Especially when he's not that active about it. He just kind of bums around until, what's that? I hear the fear of an innocent. And he jumps into it half the time. Other times he kind of sits back and watches just to like philosophically take it in. I think if I had gotten further, because I only got like episode 43, about halfway through the entire series, maybe this would have panned out a little bit. But from what I can tell, they didn't give me a whole lot to go with in the first half. I'm not motivated for the second half. Anything that develops in that second half is either not going to be based on the first half, or it's the first half didn't contribute enough to make me care about that second half. Storyline gets a third. Compulsion. Bored. Normally when I get into an anime that I get into, I can't wait to get to the next episode. It doesn't matter to me normally if I'm shotgunning it or I'm watching it on a weekly basis, which is frankly just irritating. I typically prefer to watch my story all in one go. I plowed through Naruto for like a month. This, it was like, do I have something else to watch? Oh look, YouTube, Netflix, Movie Club. There's a lot of other things I can be doing with my time. There's a lot of other things I can be doing with my time, even if it's letting it play in the background while I'm doing something else. I didn't want that, which means that I'm not into it, which means you probably need to stop watching so you had the option to come back to it later. Because at this point, I don't know if I'll ever go back and finish it. I remember loving this show back when I didn't know how to get it all in series, and I watched episode to episode, and maybe that's what saved this for people who just watch an episode here or there, because the individual fight scenes are kind of cool, but I need a little bit more to go on. When you throw it all together and you're looking at it from the big bird's eye view, you're not getting a whole lot out of it. So I can't keep myself as a fan of this. Compulsion gets a 20. Now if you total all that up, you get an average of 53.75. For my wrap-up review, I've got to say, I can't argue that it's a bad show by any means. It's obviously not a show for me, and I'm questioning whether or not it's a good show, which doesn't mean it's a bad show. It just might not be a good show either. There's a lot of romanticism in it, where there's ideology, and you have an overpowered character feeling his sphere of influence, limited as it may be, where he's never really in danger. He's always got the upper hand, and all you have to do is apply him to the situation and it's fixed. It's boring to me when you do that. It's my same issue with Superman. But I think if you're a fan of Superman, I think you like this. Keep in mind, when I was younger, and maybe when I was full of hope and less jaded, I did like this series. Again, didn't watch it through and through because I didn't necessarily have that option. Get that question in your head, should I be watching this? Do I have something else to watch? Go do that. Go do that instead. And then, if you want to, come back to it. Because as soon as you force yourself to watch something, you start killing it for the rest of your life. Now, I'm going to put a link to Neil's channel again, and I'm going to put a link to the We Are Anime Club channel. Eventually, Neil will be taking his content and putting it here. And so go check out Neil. He's a great guy. He does really good content, even if I give him a hard time occasionally. And keep an eye on We Are Anime Club to see all the good stuff that's coming up that we're going to be reviewing. Search the hashtag We Are Anime Club to see all the other people reviewing Rorouni Kenshin and whatever else we get up to later on. I'm really looking forward to seeing this pan out, and I think this is a great alternative. I was going to say an alternative to SFN Anime Club, but they're changing the format, and I don't know what it is yet. So I'll leave it at that. Anyways, that's it for me. I'm Cameron. Have a nice day. If you want to see anything else we're up to, go ahead and click the annotations, and they'll take you to our other channels.